It's the April Boomer Music Experience with my good friend Randy Helmo. Randy, who are we talking about this month?
Good morning, Dave. This month, we're going to focus on the soft rock group, Bread, David Gates and Bread.
When you first mentioned this a couple of weeks back when we were sort of talking about the next show, the name's so familiar, right? And then I went to look up the all the music, and I was just blown away. It's like they were the soundtrack of the '70s. Like they had that soft. All I could think of was hearing their music constantly on the radio, but not recognizing that it was Bread. Like it
Mhm,
all came back so quickly, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, so that was Bread,
mhm.
and David
Oh,
Gates, and I
yeah.
didn't realize it. Like, what a great band! Get into the history of these guys because wow, a great
Yeah,
band that just probably doesn't get its dues.
absolutely, Dave. Well, David Gates was born on December the 11th, 1940. He is now, of course, a retired American singer-songwriter, guitarist, musician, producer, and of course, frontman and co-lead singer with Jimmy Griffin with the musical group Bread. Now, the band was inducted into the Vocal Group Hall of Fame. Let's take a look right now, Dave, with the life and early career of David Gates. Now, originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma, David was surrounded by music from infancy. Oh, okay, this is interesting. He was the son of Clarence Gates, who was a band director, and his mother, Wanda Rollins, she was a piano teacher. So David became proficient not only in piano, but also violin, bass, and guitar by the time he enrolled at the Tulsa Will Rogers High School. How good is that? Wow, he was an accomplished artist even in those early years. David formed his first band, the Accents. Now, with other high school musicians, which included piano player Claude Russell Bridges. Now, he later changed his name to Leon Russell.
Oh,
And of
really?
course, Leon
Oh,
Russell, we all
yeah.
know Leon Russell.
I didn't know that. What a
Yeah,
connection. Wow.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So during the concert in 1957, the Accents backed Chuck Berry. Wow. How good is that? Of course, during that time, Chuck Berry was right at the top of the hit parade. In
So
19
so so he said that was 1957. So he was 17 years old, and they were
Yeah,
backing Chuck Berry. Think about that for a minute, eh? Wow.
absolutely. Like his musical from his parents, the musical background that he garnered from them, unbelievable at such a young age. In 1957, David Gates and the Accents released a 45 called on the A side was Joe Baby, on the B side was Lovin' at Night, and that was on the Robbins record label. Now, the A side, interesting here, Dave, the A side was written for his sweetheart, Joe Rita, whom he married in 1959 while enrolled at the University of Oklahoma studying law. Get that, studying law and pre med. Wow, what a departure from the rock world. And at Oklahoma University, he became a member of the Delta International Fraternity. In 1961, he and his family moved to Los Angeles, where David continued writing songs and he worked as a music copyist, also as a studio musician, and as a producer for many artists, including, hey, Love Letters in the Sand, Pat Boone. Success soon followed. His composition, I remember this one well, happy song, Popsicles and Icicles by the Mermaids. That was back in January of 1964. That went all the way up to number 3 on the Billboard Top 100. But wait, there's more. The Monkees recorded another of his songs called Saturday's Child. By the end of the 1960s, he had worked with many leading artists, including the King, Elvis Presley, Bobby Darin, Merle Haggard, Dwayne Eddy, and of course, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, only to mention a few. In 1965, David arranged the Glenn Yarborough hit, Baby, the Rain Must Fall. And in 1966, he produced two singles on A&M Records, and A&M Records stands for Albert Moss Records. Of course, Albert being Herb Alpert, Tijuana Brass, and they were fantastic decade of the 60s. Anyway, just some background information, A&M Records, and they were huge. So he produced the two singles for Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band. David scored his first motion picture in 1967 entitled Journey to Shiloh. In the meantime, David had been releasing singles of his own on several labels in the early 1960s. On Mala Records, he released, and I'll just mention a few these days, There's a Heaven, She Don't Cry, You'll Be My Baby, The Happiest Man Alive, just to mention a few. In 1967, David produced and arranged the debut album from a band called The Pleasure Fair, of which Bob Royer, this is very important, of which Bob Royer was a member. Now, a little over a year later, David and Royer got together with Jimmy Griffin to form the rock group Bread. Very important. The group was signed on by Elektra Records, and of course, Elektra back then, they were the elite record company, Elektra Records. And I can see the 45 spinning around in my head, Dave. And on the Elektra Records, it's kind of a grayish background with Elektra Records, and there's a little baby cocoon to the bottom right of Elektra, the word Elektra, and then you can see the stages of the cocoon growing. Elektra, what a great idea for a record company. And anyway, so the group signed with Elektra Records, and it remained there for 8 years until its existence, with its existence. Now, the first single, Dismal Day, written by David, was released June of 1967. That did not sell very well. David's second album, On the Waters, and this is kind of a title wordplay on Ecclesiastes, verse 11:1. Cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. Now he hired a new drummer, Mike Botts. And Mike, he was a great drummer. And from this new drummer, Dave had a number one single, one of many, entitled Make It With You. And it was the first of 7 consecutive Bread albums to go gold in the United States. How good is that?
Wow.
Wow. Bread's next 3 albums, Manna in 1971, Baby I'm a Want You, 1972, featured Larry Knechtel. No relation to Nechtels and Fort Dover, but it is spelled, well, you know something? You never know because it's spelt the same,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
it could very well
We'll
be.
have to check with
Well,
the family.
have to check ancestry.ca, folks, on that one.
Mhm.
Anyway, so Guitar Man in 1972, extremely successful. From 1970 to 1973, the band charted 11 singles on the Billboard Top 100, and they were all written by David Gates. Wow, that's phenomenal. David recorded and produced his solo album first in 1973. The single Clouds, which is an edited version of the album track Sweet Clouds and Rain, it peaked at 47, number 47 on the top Billboard 100. Now, the full album version was played extensively by Radio Carillon. That was the name of the radio station, Radio Carillon. And the presenter, DJ Samantha Dubois, at the end of her early morning radio program, her closing theme was Sweet Clouds and Rain. How good is that? A second single called Sail Around the World charted out at number 50. The album reached only 107 on the Billboard Top 200. However, David Gates released another album entitled Never Let Her Go, which is the title track of the single. And that title track reached number 29. So Bread reunited in 1976 for one album called Lost Without Your Love. It was later released that year. Now, the title track, again written and sung by David Gates, reached number 9 on the Billboard Top 100. And at the end of 1977, Gates released what would be his most successful single as a solo career, and that would be none other than The Goodbye Girl. And a great movie. If you get a chance to see the movie, I think I've seen it 10 times now, starring Marsha Mason, and Richard Dreyfuss. And I've seen both of those two actresses come through Air Canada Terminal back in the 70s when I was working with Canada Agriculture. Anyway, so here we have it. Wow. The Goodbye Girl. Wow. Oh, I can still see Marsha Mason. She's unforgettable. So anyway, it peaked at number 15. To capitalize on what was already a success, David put an album together in June of 1978 that featured material from his first 2 solo albums mixed with some new material. And of course, it yielded from there the hit Took the Last Train, not the last train to Clarksville, but Took the Last Train. And it reached number 30 on the Billboard Top 100. So David Gates, here again, in the mix, doing great stuff. David released the other albums, Falling in Love Again, featuring Where Does the Loving Go, which peaked at number 46 on the Billboard Top 100, and Take Me Now, another hit single, got to number 62 in 1981. He recorded a duet with Melissa Manchester, great singer, Wish We Were Heroes, and it included in her 1982 album, Hey Ricky. Wow. David was less active in music during the remainder of the 1980s. He concentrated mainly on operating his cattle farm in the Fall River Valley of Northern California. And now this is located on land he purchased way back in the early 1970s. So, wow, he's gone from music group, producer, musician, cattle rancher. Wow, what an interesting life. And unbelievable. He returned to music in 1994 when he released Love Is Always 17. This was his first new album, Dave, in 13 years. Wow, unbelievable. David Gates' songbook contained earlier hits and new material, and that was released in 2002, back about 22 years ago. And in that album, Engelbert Humperdinck sings Baby, I'ma Want You on the album. And In Time, and he also sings If. Now, Engelbert did a very good job on those songs, but you can't beat the original song with the original artist.
I
Wouldn't
agree.
you agree with me, Dave?
100%. 100%. There's a Bread sound with
Yep.
his voice too that you kind of come to expect. You know
Oh,
what
yeah.
I mean? It's that soft. It's mellow, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing, all their music feels that way, from what I've heard. But I
Mhm.
just think it's very peaceful, right? So
Yep.
I can't. When you said that, I was like, I'm trying to picture that song. I've never heard the
Yeah.
Engelbert version of it, but
Version.
now I might have to give it a listen. But yeah,
Yeah.
I got to be with the originals. I'm like you.
And same with Frank Sinatra, who covered If. That was in a live performance at Madison Square Garden on October the 12th, 1974, which was recorded by Reprise. Of course, Reprise at that time, the top record company. So David's songs have been recorded by many artists, including, here's one, which I
Okay.
never knew, Telly Savalas,
Really?
who
Kojak.
had a UK hit #1, and the song was If. Telly Savalas did David Gates' version of If, and it went right to the #1 charts in the UK. In 1975, Vesta Williams, she recorded the version Make It With You in 1988. That soared to the head of the charts also. Unbelievable. And Ray Parker Jr., okay,
Yep.
he recorded The Guitar Man in 2006. Boyd George, he recorded Everything I Own. That went right to the top of the UK charts, Dave. And like, here's Boyd George, here's Ray Parker Jr. Recording all of David Gates's hits and kind of recreating them, and they're going right to the top of the Billboard 100. Like,
I hope he kept all the residuals for that. I hope he owned all those songs. You know what I mean? Like, I
yes,
hope he was still. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And of course, there's Jack Jones. He recorded a Bread tribute album called
Really?
This is great.
I
Jack
like
Jones,
Jack Jones. Where? Yeah,
he's
give me some information on that.
he's good. He recorded the Bread tribute album entitled Bread Winners. How good is that? Bread Winners.
What year was? Do you know what year that was?
That was 1972. Yeah, June of 1972 to be more exacting.
Oh,
And
really?
it included David Gates's If, of course, which has long been a staple of Jones' live performances. Jack Jones, in many of his performances, he sings David Gates' song If. David Gates and Bread, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Cool.
Breadwinners, 1972, Jack Jones.
Huh.
Wow, that's amazing. And according to a 1996 article in People magazine, David Gates has remained married, of course, happily married to his high school sweetheart, Joe Rita, since 1959.
Get out!
That's
Wow, good for him.
fantastic. But here's even some more interesting music that our audience will, we really want to share this. Together, they raised 4 children, 3 lawyers, and a cardiologist,
Cardiologist?
cardiologist surgeon. 3 lawyers and a cardiac surgeon. Now, Gates, who studied the cattle ranching business while touring with Bread, he purchased a 1,400-acre cattle ranch financed by royalties he earned during his time with Bread.
Good for him.
Wow, smart. And to this day, Dave, he lives happily with his wife in Mount Vernon, Washington, enjoying his retirement. David Gates. Now, Dave, I'm going to put you on the sports hot seat here.
All right.
Of David Gates and Bread, what are your 2 most favorite songs? And this is the Essential. I have the Essential David
Okay.
Gates and Bread CD.
I'm going to go with just because when I started to look up all the music that Brett had,
Mhm.
the first 2 that came to mind that just popped right out was "Make It With You"
Mhm.
and "Baby, I'm a Wanting You." Those songs for some reason just represented the '70s to me, and then I like. It's funny because the second you said it or I heard the title, that
Mhm.
music came right back in my head. You know how that I know with you it happens all the time, right? But
Mhm.
it was just like that visual of seeing the words and then bang, it's right there again. And
Absolutely.
I just didn't. I'm kind of blown away at how much music this. And I didn't realize he did music scores. You were saying earlier, like,
Yes. Mhm.
what a talent! Like,
Oh,
just phenomenal, right?
tremendous talent, but also too, um, really an individual here. The early '70s, they have a very successful soft rock group, but then now he's looking into the future. He's putting some money away for down the road for
Yeah,
cattle ranching.
yeah.
Like,
Obviously, the
and
guy's got a head on his shoulders.
oh yeah,
You know what I would think. I don't know. You tell me what you think of this. Were they like the stepping stone for bands like Air Supply?
I would definitely say so, Dave. Good analogy there. Absolutely, no question about it. With their um, lyrics, their tunes, the sequences, um, just everything about bread. They were the ones who really started some of these later groups, as you say, like Air Supply, into a successful career, rock career. But
And when you think about the Eagles were just coming out in that era too,
that's
there's a
right.
lot of similarities with the sound, eh?
There sure are. Yeah.
Like with it, with the Eagles, the softer stuff that I sort of was like, wow, you start looking at those bands of that era, and you're starting to see
Hmm.
it. One of the things I want to do with you someday too, and I'm going to throw this right at you real quick,
Hmm.
is I want to go over like the year 1971.
Hmm.
If you look back at the history of music in 1971,
Hmm.
I'm kind of wondering if it was the pinnacle. Just there's so much music that came out that year that was so good. And I want you to take a look at that. And we're going to have
Yeah.
a conversation of that on our next show. But back to Bread. But I mean, that's
Hmm.
kind of that music through that era was so expansive, and
Oh,
so many different genres were being formed, right?
no question about it, Dave. And they were the trendsetters, the soft rock group Bread in the early 70s, especially, as you had mentioned, the year 1971, because that was a pivotal year. And down through the history of rock and roll and just rock, basically, and to country music also,
Yeah,
there's pivotal years that kind of restructure the music
I
for
agree.
that particular genre of music.
Now, I've sort of said air supply on one end. You looking back at your music knowledge, is there a band in the 50s and 60s that sort of you could see how Bread might have developed from them? Is there any
Uh,
lineage there that you see?
yeah, I would say um, a little bit of Fats Domino,
Okay.
a little bit of Fats Domino, Jerry Lee Lewis to some extent,
Okay.
and then also Bill Haley and the Comets. Bill Haley and especially Bill Haley and the Comets. I think this was a focal turning point. And then, okay, so that's 1956, 55, 56.
So Gates would have been in that age.
That's right. Yep, same
Yeah,
age
it's
bracket.
interesting to see who those folks listen to, eh? Like you can
Oh,
see the influence through, right? And you could probably go
absolutely.
back even further, I bet you, with him, because it sounds like with his parents' background, he was probably very knowledgeable about the old R&B and what the sounds were, obviously,
Oh,
and to create Bread's. Well, obviously the band created Bread's sound with him, but I mean,
mhm,
just that lineage, right? You can follow that lineage usually.
that's right.
And
Yeah.
maybe there's, yeah, I mean, you kind of nailed it there. Maybe there's a little bit there with the band, a little bit of that soft sound too, you know?
Yes. Mhm. In
Not
fact,
the Carolinian feel to it, but I mean,
mhm,
and
yeah, good,
obviously,
good point there, Dave. With the band, Rick Danko and company, there, they, yeah, their sounds were on similar songs, similar to Bread, that
Whispering
kind of
Pines comes to
soft rock.
mind. Yeah, Whispering Pines comes to mind.
Yeah,
You know,
Whispering Pines. Yep.
sort of comes to mind with that.
The Weight,
Yeah.
another song
Mhm.
there with kind
Yeah.
of overtones of Bread in it. Oh yeah,
It'll be
very.
interesting. I mean, I wonder who of all the groups too later on. I wonder how much
Mhm,
Gates influenced Bread with David Gates influenced them, because you're right. I mean, the '80s became. I mean, it had a little bit of everything, but there was a ton of not a ton, but there was a very solid stream of soft rock through that era.
mhm,
And a lot of
absolutely.
those guys were seeing that sound.
Mhm.
Great show. I didn't
No,
again, this was a really good education one for me, because you just take these bands for granted, folks. And Randy provides us with that insight to who they were, what they did, the members, and just what it's all about. But yeah, I was just impressed when you were going through his early stuff. Wow,
mhm,
like what he's
yes,
producing and he's rating, and he's already way ahead of the curve when he's in his early 20s, right?
absolutely. Oh, no question about it. He was a legend in his own time.
Yeah, he is, because he's still going,
Yeah,
which is kind of
yeah,
cool.
that's right. Yeah, and I might add too. For those of you, Canada's favorite coffee shop, Tim Hortons, celebrating their 60th anniversary this year,
6 years.
and especially this in the month of March. Um, you got to go in and taste some of those uh, donuts, the twists.
Oh, Randy,
Uh,
look what a
back to the
shameless
original.
plug. You're a shameless
Oh,
plugger. Oh my goodness.
fantastic! Yeah, And it's they're great. And these were the 6 original donuts and twists, sugar twists that they had when Tim Horton opened his first Tim Hortons shop.
I want to know, are you getting a kickback and you're not telling me?
Uh, no, just advertising for
Tim's.
one of the Toronto Maple Leafs
Yeah.
greatest players, Tim Horton,
Yeah, I agree.
and we honor Tim Horton. Yes.
Next month, let's talk about, if you feel up to it, and let's go with that. Let's talk a little bit about 1971.
Sure. Sounds like
I
a
think
plan. Dave.
we can get our homework done, and the folks can look forward to that. And folks, if you just put on a playlist from 1971, you're going to be blown away. It's
Right
just
on.
one of those years that music just seemed to explode everywhere, and you'll be surprised how many hits you know. But Randy, thanks for doing this today. I really enjoyed this show. It's wonderful to figure out, wonderful to be educated on David Gates and bread.
Mm-hmm. And just to let the audience know, if you get a chance to purchase the Essential Bread, it's a great CD, and all of his hits are on there. The Essential Bread, David Gates and bread.
Thanks
very
for doing
much,
this.
Dave.
Yep. Have a great day, bud.
You too. Have a good week. And we got 1971 coming up on our next podcast.
On our May show.
Yes.